Cabin Fever. I'm Jake Berry. Today, from Vela High School, we've got Coach John Campbell. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Coach, talk to me about the offseason. You guys have had it's an interesting offseason. A lot of coaches are doing different things. What have you guys had to do in the offseason to get ready for next season?
Well, I don't want to say unfortunately. I guess fortunately the deal was is we felt really good about where we were. I think every coach, every program, you kind of have a break in what you're doing in the program going up into spring break. So felt very good about where we were as a program entering into spring break, and then of course, the entire nation basically gets shut down. At this point, been a little bit different, but everybody's in the same boat. So it's kind of a twofold answer to your question. Really good about where we were up until spring break. I think we've got a really good group of kids as we do coaches as well, and just looking forward to being able to get back and have some semblance of normalcy.
And looking at next season, you guys were going to have a totally different district, and you're going to lose Westlake and East. What were you guys doing to prepare for next season before this all happened?
We weren't getting very specific, other than I think in the beginning you're trying to, as do everybody, you're trying to get as prepared as you can physically, and then slowly start to transition the kids back out to the grass or the turf or whatever it may be, and get a little bit more skill specific and things of that nature. And obviously that process got interrupted. So I wouldn't say that there was anything specific towards a new district or anything that was going on. We were about to enter in to that phase before we are where we are now.
And last season you guys had a tremendous season. You didn't have you didn't win district like you had in the past, but come playoff time, talk to me about how you guys were able to turn it up. Like you guys, because you had some tough games against Westlake East, but then it seemed like playoffs come around and Vela kind of takes it to a different level.
I don't think that has anything to do with us per se. It was the development of the kids, the program, the expectations within the program. Obviously, some of our performances during the year were disappointing, but I think the how can you say it? The mark of a good program is how you respond to those disappointments, those losses. With that being said, we play some really good quality programs over the course of our schedule. And I think every high school coach will tell you every year is a different year, and quite a few young faces, new faces in the Vela program. Those kids started to grow up and mature, and fortunately we're able to put together a pretty decent playoff run.
Yeah, because you guys played, first of all, Harlingen right off the bat, which isn't an easy game to start with in the playoffs. And then Eagle Pass, and then Brandeis. That game was incredible. I mean, you guys really were in a position to take that victory. What was it like going against, teams that you're really familiar with, too, in Brandeis?
It was a little bit different, but, at the end of the day, you're out there competing. You had a chance to visit with some faces that you saw. There were some kids there that were in the feeder program when I was at Brandeis, and then obviously some guys on the coaching staff, administrators, things of that nature. No, but once that whistle signals the first kickoff, it's competition time, and it was a really good, hard-fought ball game that went down to about 2 or 3 plays, and unfortunately, we were on the bad end of a couple of plays, and it turned out to be the difference in the ball game.
What can you say about, and I know you probably don't want to take credit for it, but you guys have really created a Division I recruiting program. You can't say that about every Valley team, and like there are few and far between. There's like players, but you guys have become a hotbed for talented, especially linemen this year. But you guys have had talented players come through, and you've been able to cultivate that and really grow that.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to, you don't want to take credit for that. I mean, I'm not responsible for kids, the Ronnie Garzas of the world being 6'6". I'd like to think that we're responsible as coaches for marketing our kids and marketing our program and and trying to incorporate systems and schemes that develop their talents, that allow them to go and perform well at summer camps and things of that nature. And from that standpoint, I think we've done a good job. But at the same time, Mr. and Mrs. Garza, they're responsible for Ronnie being, 6'6". The Borjas family, we can go on. There is a physical genetic component to those kids getting recruited as well.
Now, I remember talking to Matt Stepp before you came down. Just because you were kind of the enigma. You were coming from San Antonio, and he talked about how you used to love to run the ball a ton, and now that you don't run the ball now, but when I heard that when you were coming down, that you were going to have like this run happy offense, it was going to be very traditional. But you guys have really still aired the ball out when you can, but you have a very explosive offense. What was your focus coming down? Like, how are you going to put your stamp on this program?
I think I think coaches sometimes get labeled by the systems that the schemes rather that they're running, and people forget a little bit about the system. I think it's very, very important that you look at what your talent base is. I think every community is different. The type of kid that we had at Brandeis High School, the type of kid we had at John Jay High School, the type of kid that you have at a Madison High School was different. In addition to the fact that unique for me was the first time in my career that I had come into a situation and we basically had inherited a program that had a bunch of success. Coach Salinas, I mean, obviously he wouldn't have gotten the job that he got had he not done been a good coach. But systematically, the thought process is exactly the same. It's about flanks, it's about numbers, it's about trying to get ourselves in the best situation that we can. And I get asked this at the beginning of games all the time: are you going to run the ball, or are you going to throw the ball? And it always depends on what they're going to give us. So we were able to incorporate that system within the framework of what previously existed, with a different talent pool, with a different personnel grouping. But if you really go back and look at it, what we're doing is very, very, very similar system-wise to what we were doing at Brandeis High School back in 2014.
I wanted to talk to you about San Antonio versus here, because you've got a different talent pool as far as the type of players. And if it's been harder to coach here or easier to coach here than it was in San Antonio, or what's the differences? Because a lot of coaches think that, if you can do it in San Antonio, you can come here, or vice versa. If you can do it here, you can go to San Antonio because we don't have as much talent, but you can go there and win. But what's the difference?
I think it's hard to label. We always want to label. We want to say if a kid is from, I don't know, Harlingen, or if they're coming, I even hear it down here now, being in the Valley for going on 4 years, the kids are even different within their respective communities. I think some of that is the culture of your community, the traditions of your community. But at the end of the day, we're dealing with 15, 16, and 17-year-old kids. And on a certain part of San Antonio, you may have more of a particular body type or more of a particular style of athlete, so to speak. A school's baseball program may be the tradition. Another school's track program may be the tradition. I think it's just very important to latch on to whatever that shining star is in that community. And I don't want to say you build your program around it, but you adapt your teaching, you adapt what you're doing based off of what is the strong suits of that respective community. So kind of the long-winded answer to your question, I wouldn't say one is any harder or more difficult. Every program has its challenges and every program has its strengths. And I think the good programs do a good job of enhancing those strengths and attacking, not backing off from the challenges. We've been very fortunate at Vela High School that this is a proud community that loves football. But I can't say that without saying Robert Vela High School is good in a lot of sports, and we do a good job academically too. And usually that's a snapshot of what's going on at home, more so than what we're doing up at the school. So there's obviously in our community, we've got parents and family members that expect their children to do well. And I would say that's the most critical factor anywhere. I don't care whether you're in Dallas or Houston, the Rio Grande Valley or San Antonio, to having a strong and consistent program.
You mentioned community, and I wanted to bring that up because, the Valley doesn't have a pro team. We have the Vipers and we have the Toros, but we don't have like a Spurs. And I always hear this, that, in San Antonio, they don't focus on high school football quite like the Valley does, where it's what we have and we live and die for Friday nights here. What's it been like for you as far as adjusting to that? Because, I always hear about how, like Coach Leo Mireles in Rio, he went there and, he did really well his first year, and, you're treated like a rock star. But, how have you been able to gauge that compared to when you were in San Antonio?
I can do it in one word, and it's refreshing for somebody that, pays the bills by coaching high school football. I mean, you got to pinch yourself sometimes to remind you that's how you make your living. To come into a situation, into an environment where, just as you mentioned, I mean, it's important, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal in our community, but it's also a big deal in a lot of other communities. And to be a part of that on the field, to look up there sometimes, when I first came down, probably the neatest thing, we're getting ready. I can't remember what the opponent was, and we're over there at Flores Stadium, and it was a Veterans Day celebration, and you got the fire truck cranking up the biggest flag that we've got down here in the Edinburgh area, and it was just one of those things that reminds you of how special high school football is in the state of Texas. And yeah, to answer your question, it's no longer like that in San Antonio, and I don't think that's the fault of San Antonio per se. It's grown so big. Communities have expanded. Communities have moved to the periphery of the town. So to maintain a lot of those traditions that we have here in the Rio Grande Valley has been difficult. And but to answer your question, extremely refreshing.
All right. One of my last questions, I do want to ask this, and I think it's important to ask, is in your 4 years, it's 4 years, right, with Ella?
Going on, yes, sir.
Going on 4 years. What has it been like for you? Like, did you have one of those moments where, it's your marquee game for when, you've been at Vela, your marquee moment where you go, oh man, this is it. This is the one I remember the most.
It's funny that you ask that, because sometimes you go back and there's games that you forget, and there's games that somebody says something and it jogs your memory. I think it's really, really difficult, particularly the further that you go into your career. You go back and you're like, holy cow, I've been a head coach in 200 varsity football games, whatever the number is. I'm just throwing a number out there. And when you're in the midst of the season, the nature of our business is it's always on to the next, get ready for the next. And your window to enjoy those moments is very, very, very small. So really, I don't base it so much on the games. There's little particular moments with kids, moments with coaches, moments in the field house prior to, sometimes on the bus drive, when you're stopping at Hebronville to eat your Subway sandwich. The further I've gone into my career, the more I try to cherish those moments, because the reality is the football game is 40 minutes of playable time, and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, and it's on to the next one. But really, it's the relationships that you develop over the course of that season that I don't think people realize is, it's 5,000 times more important than what happens on Friday night. For every Friday night that we're out there, there's a Monday afternoon, there's a Monday morning meeting, there's a Tuesday afternoon workout in 100-degree heat, and it's actually those moments, I think, that I cherish and I can remember more than specific moments. So I know that was kind of a chicken answer to your question, but
You know, and a lot of people don't realize that, and I'm trying to add up from last year. I think you're at what, 131 wins total, which is, it would put you, I think, third right now in the active down here in the Valley. But you know, you have 15 seasons, 12 years in the playoffs. As far as your career, when you first started, did you think this is where you were going to be at? I mean, a lot of people say, you know, I'm going to be a great coach, but they're like me, they're mediocre. But like, did you think you were going to have this much success in your career?
You never. I mean, obviously, you don't try to do anything where you don't think that you're going to have success. But to go back 15 years ago and say you're going to be coaching 15 years and here and there, this football is a funny business. Sometimes it's like a roller coaster, and you're just on the ride. I don't go back and look at the wins and the losses and the overall. To me, each group represents something different. The 4 and 6 year that we had at Katie Taylor trying to get, you know, transitional program. I have some great relationships from that group of kids. It doesn't really stand out on the resume necessarily. You know, starting off at John Jay High School, I just remember there we hadn't been in the playoffs and God knows how long. All we wanted to do was make the playoffs. And I think it was that driving force as young coaches, Coach Baser and myself that are over there is at Brennan High School, and Juan Morales that's over there at Holmes High School, and the group of guys we had and those kids. And there was a lot of lessons learned in that first year. But with that being said, you learn every year, and you take something from the guys that you work with, from the community that you're working in, and then from the kids, and you're trying to constantly get better and better and better, and hopefully that produces something that your community can be proud of.
All right, the last question I have is this. You know, I had Manny Gomez on. You know, I have you on now, and I'm just curious. Do you think there's success in having a shaved head, or is it just a sexy thing? Because you know, you're rocking the do like me and Manny.
I don't have a whole lot of hair options, so I can't speak on behalf of Manny. Manny does more push-ups than me, so I think he may be going for some kind of Mr. Clean look kind of a thing, and it works with him. He's got that big old strong physical presence. Me, on the other hand, if I let this hair grow out, I don't really know what it would look like. I'm not exactly sure on your end, but yours is looking pretty sharp.
You know, I got to lose weight though, because if I don't, I just look like Suge Knight from old NWA days. Hey, the one thing I did want to ask before I let you go is this. Do you think we're starting on time this year? Because everybody, like San Antonio's had some issues yesterday, just alone their AD had to go on and put out some stuff on when that they're going to have a season. Do you think we start on time? Matt Stepp thinks we're about a month off. What do you think?
You know, I think I think the state of Texas, and I think the UIL, and I think the superintendents are committed to starting on time. I'm going to put an asterisk next to it. You know, I've got a good relationship with Colby Carthel at SFA, and I kind of pick his brain on the college end. Obviously, FCS, a little bit different in terms of how they have to fund things, kind of stuck in the middle. Don't really travel too much out of state, but they do. And I kind of pick his brain as to where he thinks the what information he's getting from the NCAA. And the reason I mention that is I don't think the UIL is going to necessarily do more than the NCAA. I think, though, at the end of the day, with the NCAA, and the reality is schools are traveling across state lines, it's going to go back to everybody's respective governors and local government. If we're sitting in a situation where, I'm just going to use the state of California, I don't know enough about the politics, and they're not open, and somebody's supposed to go travel over to Cal Berkeley to play a game and they can't, I don't think the NCAA is going to start on time. The reason, I guess what I'm saying is, if the NCAA is not starting on time, I wouldn't expect necessarily the UIL to trump that unless there was some form of measures in place to where, for instance, we could test all of our kids, or we could somehow guarantee, not necessarily guarantee, but more ensure their safety. So, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I really don't want to speculate. Try to be as objective and educated as possible. Our leaders are in a really difficult situation right now. So I guess what I'm saying is, if we can, we will. If for some reason something gets held up with the NCAA and it's not a politically correct decision for Texas high school football to start the first week in September, where the NCAA is waiting until October, I can see us falling in line and getting in line with the NCAA.
Well, I appreciate this. Sorry, I had like a little bit of delay here. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I appreciate this because you telling us your opinion, because a lot of coaches are kind of skittish on this right now, and rightfully so, because nobody wants to delay the season, nobody wants to wait, but you got to do the right thing. But I appreciate you taking the time today, Coach, to come on, talk about your career a little bit, talk about Vela, and I hope we can do this again this summer. When we're on time for the next season.
No, well, I had a good time. I appreciate you. I appreciate the invite. It's an honor. And again, thanks. It was fun visiting with you.
Thanks, Coach.